What a ride it's been for Novak Djokovic at this year's Australian Open. He entered the tournament with a hamstring injury, and after a win against Enzo Cucad on Thursday, things looked to be intensifying. But before I jump into all that, let's take a step back and get to know the player himself. Novak Djokovic is a professional tennis player from Serbia and is currently ranked #1 in the world by the Association of Tennis Professionals. What's more, he's considered one of the best men's players in the game's history, with a record 9 Australian Open wins and 21 Grand Slam titles under his belt. Growing up in war-ravaged Serbia in the 1990s, Djokovic started playing tennis at the age of 4 and quickly rose through the ranks. To add, by the time he turned 16, he was Europe's top-ranked player and turned pro in 2003. Now he's ushering in a new era of tennis with his unique and remarkable playing abilities, threatening to push aside modern heavyweights. All in all, Djokovic has become a national idol in Serbia, and his tennis triumphs have given the country a favorable image. And he's their most influential athlete, paving the way for a new generation of successful athletes. But just as Djokovic aimed to create history by winning his 21st Grand Slam at this year's Australian Open, he got caught up in a debate over Australia's COVID-19 vaccination requirements for visitors. Despite being granted an exemption, his visa was eventually revoked, and he was deported before the competition even began. It was a big disappointment for the Serb, who was ready to bring another level of competition to this year's Australian Open. But now, the 2023 Australian Open is heating up, and one player is making waves with his comeback. Novak Djokovic, the polarizing tennis pro, is on the brink of completing one of the most dramatic narrative arcs in sports history. After being banned from the country for 3 years, Djokovic is back and scything his way through the competition with a cloud of righteous rage. Despite being one of the few top players who haven't been vaccinated against COVID-19, Djokovic has found a welcoming crowd in Australia. With some of the more restrictive restrictions during the pandemic, Australia no longer requires confirmation of vaccination or a negative test for admission into the country. So in November, the new government lifted Djokovic's ban, allowing him to return to the country and play in the Open. In fact, the Serb was greeted with applause in Adelaide after winning a preliminary event and had strong support from the crowd during a practice session with Australian Nick Kyrgios. And he went on to deliver an outstanding performance in front of a 15,000-person max crowd that had picked up all available tickets in less than an hour. But as the tournament is coming to an end, Djokovic's revenge arc might be doing the same. Will he be able to complete his comeback and take the title? Well, it's been a wild ride for Novak Djokovic since his big win against Cucad. In fact, he overcame a damaged muscle in his stomach to win the Australian Open in 2021, but now rumors are flying that he's suffering from a tricky hamstring injury. And his team ain't commenting on reports that he might have to withdraw from the tournament, but it's clear that there's growing anxiety over the 9-time winner's performance in Melbourne. What's more, Djokovic hasn't been hitting the courts lately and instead choosing to rest his injury. But the tournament organizers are still expecting him to play the opening match of the night session on Friday evening at Rod Laver Arena. But of course, his fans know that it's not like Djokovic to be so open about an injury, which is causing concern among the tennis community. Djokovic is a fighter, and we all know that he'll do whatever it takes to get back on the court and defend his title. But then again, some oddsmakers have been naming Djokovic a long-shot favorite to win the Australian Open for the second time. Even tennis icon John McEnroe believes that this injury might be too much for Djokovic to win the championship. He is still the 6-5 favorite, but it's becoming more questionable if he'll be able to play the 5 further matches required to capture the trophy. As the tournament progresses, we'll have to wait and see if Djokovic will be able to power through and defend his title, or if this injury will be the end of his winning streak. But the 9-time Australian Open champion wasn't about to let an injury stop him from winning. Despite looking uneasy and wincing in pain, he managed to avoid an early exit like Rafael Nadal and Casper Ruud, ultimately taking home the victory with a final score of 6-1, 6-7, 6-5, 6-2, 6-0. This set up a third-round match with Grigor Dimitrov. But it wasn't just the injury that had Djokovic on edge during the match. He also had to deal with a drunken spectator badgering him, which ultimately led to the spectator being ejected. Djokovic came into the event with an injury he sustained while playing in Adelaide 2 weeks ago, but managed to breeze through his first-round encounter against Roberto Carballes Baena. He said afterward that his leg was feeling a lot better. But then again, during the second set, Djokovic's injury flared up again and he called for the trainer at 4-5 before walking off the court. But fans of Djokovic know that he's no stranger to seemingly miraculous recoveries from physical injuries. In fact, he's won the Australian Open title twice before, including one win where he ripped an abdominal muscle. Despite struggling during the game, Djokovic managed to push through and win the match. However, Eurosport commentator and 8-time Grand Slam champion Mats Wilander thought Djokovic's statements after the match were alarming. But it's unclear if his chances of capturing a 10th title in Melbourne are still in question. It's not at all surprising to hear that some people have accused Novak Djokovic of faking his injury to avoid playing in this year's Australian Open.
We both had some medical timeouts and struggled a little bit.
And even though there was a lot of drama at the beginning of 2022, this time around it's not as intense. So while no one has directly accused him, there are whispers and hints that Djokovic is faking his injury. But let's be real, it's probably just people's perceptions that are affected by their own prejudices. Plus, tennis is more politicized than ever before, and it's important to remember that. With 3 all-time greats competing for the top championships, records, and fan affection, it's no surprise that there are divisions among fans, just like in football and other team sports. If you dislike Novak Djokovic, you might suspect him of faking an injury. In fact, if you're not a fan of Rafael Nadal, you might suspect him of doping. But neither is likely to have occurred. And then again, tennis is a physically demanding sport, and if you're not pushing your body to its limits, you're probably not playing it correctly. Novak Djokovic probably manages his injuries better than most, so why is it so hard to believe that he's doing the same now? In fact, he's better than almost everyone on the tennis court at almost everything. In the end, it's clear that suspicions of faking injuries are something that tennis can do without, whether you like a particular player or not. All in all, Djokovic is right. It's time to focus on the game and not on unfounded suspicions. That's it for today. See you in the next video.